Why do companies hire salespeople who never hit quota? Why does one bad salesperson end up costing you $50,000, $100,000 or more? Today, we are going to break down the most common hiring mistakes companies make when they're bringing salespeople on board. We'll talk about the classic misconceptions, the classic errors companies make again and again that end up costing them repeatedly. We'll dispel those rumors. At the end, you will walk away with specific steps to use from now on to make sure you're only bringing on board real producers for you. So let's talk about the mistakes. First and foremost, the resume. Companies will often think that a resume equals experience. No, it doesn't. Anyone can write anything on a resume. Resumes can be great for telling you what the person did and when, but oftentimes that's about it. We have to be a little bit better as detectives as we're hiring salespeople to really understand what's beneath the resume. What's the person underneath that surface, if you will? Look for clues within the resume that can tell us about the person's real drive. Things like what they did in terms of their spare time in school, things that they may have pursued in college that would indicate drive. All those in terms of background can be helpful if the resume include them. However, there are three key things that companies who have consistently found high drive salespeople have told us that they look for in a resume that tend to predict high drive. Number one, they look for passive candidates as opposed to active candidates. In other words, they look for salespeople who are not actively out there looking. They look for those who are currently employed. If someone's been actively out there looking for a while in the world of sales, there's generally a good reason for it. So oftentimes when you look for those individuals who are passive, you're going to have a better chance of finding somebody who's high drive. Number two, they look for the person who's not a job hopper. So they have some longevity in the positions they've held. Now, of course, one or two positions immediately after school, that might be okay for the person to move around a little bit, but thereafter we want to see more stability. And then number three, they look for the person who is able to provide whatever meets the guidelines in terms of your particular state, some sort of metrics to show that they have been successful, some sort of metrics to show that they've done well consistently as a salesperson in the past. They find that those three elements all together, again, the person who is not a job hopper, number two, they're more of a passive candidate than an active candidate, number three, they're able to give you some metrics. They find that those three elements together do tend to predict a higher overall drive score. In terms of screening, phone screening process, they tend to use a very soft phone screening process, those that make the classic hiring mistakes. In other words, they might be more inclined to ask a candidate, so what got you interested in our company? Rather than approach it from a bit of a different standpoint, which is to challenge the candidate. And again, high drive salespeople love being challenged. So are you committed, high drive salesperson, to working in an environment that's absolutely kick-ass, where we set high standards for each other and we hold each other to those standards? An environment that's competitive, where we work hard and we play hard. An environment where we are certain that we will succeed and we have the resilience together to pull each other through the difficult times. High drive salespeople, real producers, love those types of questions. When you have someone that's enjoying those questions, that's another big clue that they're going to be the type of individual psychologically who's going to produce for you. Number three, oftentimes they will use no testing at all in the hiring process. No sort of a psychological assessment. And psychological assessments are so important as part of the screening process to help identify individuals. They're not the be-all end-all. They're one piece of data, but they're very important in terms of deciding who do we bring into the interview when we aggregate them with all the other data that we're using. Now, there are many great tests out there. Some to check out include the caliper assessment, known now I believe as Talogy. Check out the objective management group assessment. Check out the predictive index. That's another great one. Of course, if you need a high drive salesperson, I'd recommend the drive test. Use some sort of an assessment in the hiring process to make sure that the person you're bringing, again, to the interview process has a bit of a higher caliber, a bit of a higher standard, if you will, than just any random candidate. When you combine the well-constructed assessment with all the other pieces of data, now you're much more likely to be interviewing someone who's worthy of your time. That brings us to the next stage, weak interviews. So many companies don't know how to interview effectively. Invest in a course on behavioral interviewing. The well-constructed assessment combined with a well-constructed behavioral interview is such a powerful hiring platform, keeping in mind the best predictor of future behavior is previous behavior. We don't have time to get into that in detail today, but keeping in mind that we're asking the candidate about behavior they've engaged in at work that reflects the characteristics we would like for them to show for us going forward. Number five, this is a critical one. When they bring the person on board during that critical onboarding process, those first critical 90 days, they mismanage them because they don't know how to handle that person. They don't know how to handle a high drive salesperson, which is a lot like, let's face it, handling a Ferrari. You need to be able to do that effectively, and there's a skill. There's a skill to doing that. What I want to leave you with today, if you look at the link underneath the video, there'll be a specific guide that you can use to get you started, a tutorial on managing high drive salespeople. I think you'll find the tutorial very helpful in bringing salespeople on board and increasing the odds they're going to do well, because imagine if you had the majority of your team, 80% of your team, hitting or exceeding quota, what that would look like for you, what that would mean to your business. You follow this process step by step, including maintaining that discipline during the first 90 days that you'll see in the the guide that I'm going to be giving you underneath, you'll find that you have a much greater odds of doing so. And again, if I can be of service to you in any other way, let me know. We talk about all of this more on our website, salesdrive.info. And don't forget, it all starts with drive.